Hey, what's up? So before we get started, I gotta get something off my chest, which is clearly I'm not an Indian dude. I'm a 32-year-old white dude from Chicago named Brian, and that does not make me an expert on the style, but I am an enthusiast. The food we're gonna be making here today is what I would consider Indian-ish. It's got a lot of the same flavors. It's definitely inspired by Indian food, and I think most people would say, yeah, that tastes like Indian food, bro. Good job. So the dish that we're making started as the takeout classic Aloo Gobi, and I took it a little bit more of a chicken Tikka Masala route. We brought in a heavier, richer sauce, and I added in some more vegetables too to round it out, make it a little bit more like an entree. From there, we're gonna pair it up with some toasty, buttery rice pilaf, and the whole thing's gonna be a pro setup that you can make at home on a weeknight in like 30 minutes. So to get started on this dish, grab a head of cauliflower. This one's been suffering in the back of my fridge for a while, so I'm gonna need to zip off all the little black bits of gunk here and there. We only need half a head here too, so I'm gonna throw the severed half back into its little forgotten corner in the back of the fridge. I'm gonna start by removing the core of this head, and then we're gonna chop things down to a manageable size. We're looking for roughly 1 to 1.5 inch size pieces here. Any bigger than that, we might have some unevenness in our textures later on. Once those are all chopped up, we're gonna scoop them into a quart container, and we're gonna set all that aside. Up next, we're gonna chop down a medium yellow onion. Once it's peeled and sliced across the grain, rotate it 90 degrees and then just come across with a simple chop. We don't need any fancy knife skills here for this. We're just looking to knock this onion down to about a medium dice. Once that's chopped, we're gonna set it aside and then grab some garlic. We need to peel those. All day we need about 3 to 4 cloves, and then we're just gonna throw a mince on them or either throw them through the garlic press. We're gonna scoop that up, set it aside, and then grab 3 to 4 inches of fresh ginger. Since I usually cook this during the work week and it's 2020 where nothing matters, I'm not even gonna bother peeling this ginger. I'm gonna be grating it on the coarsest side of my box grater, and in my experience, that does all the work. It pulverizes the skin and the ginger just fine. Next, I'm gonna grab 1 jalapeno and throw a small dice into it. Go for 2 jalapenos here if you like things spicy, which as you can guess, in India, they do. They like it spicy. Once you got that dice, scoop that in with the ginger and garlic. There we go. Next, we're grabbing 3/4 of a pound of the potato of your choice. But the skin here is a little bit thicker than we want for this dish, so we're gonna peel them off. And to do that, we gotta grab this peeler that I absolutely hate. I got this peeler at the dollar store in a pinch when I really needed one, and I absolutely hate it. And I only remember that I have a crappy peeler when I'm going to peel something, and then I promptly forget it until the next time. So I'm gonna do this. I'm gonna jump in, we're gonna suffer through these potatoes and give them a peel, but not perfectly. We don't need to worry about getting 100% of the skin off, just most of it. Once those are all peeled, we're gonna cut these potatoes into square planks, and then we're gonna cut them down in about 1/2 inch cubes. Looking at this, I'm gonna call it probably like a large dice. I really like cutting potatoes into squares, by the way. It's such an easy vegetable to make uniform, and it's just an overall enjoyable process for me. Once we've got all these potatoes cubed up, we're gonna scoop them up and then set them aside. Oh, and I forgot, we got one more vegetable to cut here, which is green beans. I like to buy the pre-cleaned French style green beans here. They're more tender than a standard green bean, and I find that they have a good amount more green bean flavor. These were in the back of my fridge where it's super cold, and I think they got a little bit of a frostbite on them, but they're still fresh and usable and snappy, so we're gonna cut them down, and once we move our knife through those, we're just gonna scoop them up and set them aside. Up next, we're gonna bust out a spice blend for this dish, and a simple curry powder off the shelf is great and useful. And if it's all you have, it's definitely gonna get you where you need to go, but I'm gonna add a few things to mine to kind of beef it up and make it a little bit more chef B-boy. So into a small container, we're gonna measure 6 grams of turmeric, 6 grams of cumin, 15 grams of curry powder, 3 grams of garam masala, and 3 grams of chili flake. Once things are combined, we're gonna lid it up, shake it up, and then set it aside. Okay, so that's all the cutting for the main part of this dish, but as I mentioned, we're gonna be making some super dope rice pilaf. So to get started on that, we need to grab 1/2 of a red onion, and that's just because I happen to have a red onion in my fridge. I'm gonna throw a very rustic slice on this red onion. I really like to have large chunks of aromatics in my pilaf. Once I got that red onion sliced, I'm gonna grab 1 garlic clove and run it through my garlic press. Anyways, for this pilaf, we're gonna throw about 3 tablespoons of butter into that saucepan and let it melt. Once that butter's melty, we're gonna add in 200 grams of the white rice of your choice. I'm also gonna fold in the onions and garlic at this point. We're gonna fry all this stuff together for about 5 to 6 minutes over medium heat. Oh, and by the way, I'm using a medium grain rice here called CLOVES that I'm really stoked on right now. If you aren't using this exact medium grain rice, the amounts could be a little bit different for you, so I would go by the package instructions for sure. After about 5 to 6 minutes, minutes, things are looking toasty and fried, and the rice is taking on a really nice translucent quality. At this point, we're gonna add 400 grams of water and then bring things to a quick simmer. I do wanna cover this, but I lost the lid for this pot, so I'm just gonna double down on a layer of foil here. I'm also gonna be turning the heat down to low, like really low. We wanna make sure that the rice is just at the edge of a boil for about 15 minutes. After that 15 minutes, we're gonna come back and check the rice. It's absorbed all of its water, it's swollen up a bit, and it's about 90% of the way cooked. At this point, we're gonna take it off the heat and let it steam to finish cooking for about 15 more minutes. While that rice finishes cooking, we're gonna preheat a Dutch oven over high heat with about 2 to 3 tablespoons of coconut oil. Once that oil is shimmering, I'm gonna add in my potatoes. We're gonna give those potatoes a 2 to 3 minute head start on the cauliflower because they take the longest to cook, and having crunchy potatoes and mushy cauliflower mixed together is a real drag. Once these potatoes have released some of their water and are starting to take on a little bit of color, that's when we're gonna add in our cauliflower and then our onions. And then I'm gonna follow all of that with a really strong pinch of salt. Stir all that up to combine, and then we're gonna cook that on medium-high heat for about 4 to 5 minutes. The salt's a really important part of this process. It helps draw out some of that moisture and kind of gives us this weird cooking method. It's kind of like a sauteing, but it's more like a slow steaming. The moisture in the vegetables is really what we're using to transfer the heat from the pan. After that 4 or 5 minutes, the vegetables here should look a little bit wet, slightly more tender, but they're definitely not cooked all the way through. Cooking off a little bit of their water here gives us a more concentrated flavor later on. If we just threw everything into the pot and then put curried liquid over top of it and boiled it, it would be bland and kind of flabby, and I've done it before and it just doesn't taste very good. At this point, we're gonna add our ginger, garlic, and jalapeno mix, and then the spice blend. We're gonna stir all that up to combine and let it fry and bloom, and we're just trying to open up these flavors basically. In real classic Indian food, they take this blooming step a lot more seriously. They usually start by frying just the spices and then set those aside, but this is a weeknight dish and it's a one pot dish, so we're skipping that step just to keep things simple. Once everything's all fragrant and bloomed up, we're gonna add in about 20 grams of tomato paste and stir that in to coat all these vegetables. Next, we're gonna add in 350 grams of water or chicken stock, and I'm gonna follow that with 350 grams of pureed tomatoes. I like to buy this tomato passata product, which is basically just tomato puree. If all you have is diced tomatoes, just make sure you're blending them up a little bit before you throw them in. I don't particularly like chunky tomatoes in a dish like this. When it gets mixed up, it kind of gets stuck to all these tender vegetables and it kind of looks like barf. Oh yeah, and add the green beans in here and stir all that up. Use your wooden spoon to scrape the bottom just to make sure that there's no potato starch or spices that are stuck down there. They're gonna scorch when we go to cook this in a second. Also, do your best to make sure that all the veggies are submerged in the cooking liquid the best that you can. I'm gonna come by and check on this every 3 to 4 minutes and stir things up to make sure that things are cooking evenly. After about 15 minutes, it's time to come by and take a tenderness check on the veggies. I'm gonna bite a potato and a piece of cauliflower, maybe smash a potato against the side just to get a gauge for where everything's at. At this point, everything in here is looking good and it's tasting good, so I'm gonna take it off the heat and we're gonna finish things off. The secret weapon here of this whole dish is the frozen pea. These are an underrated commodity in my opinion. I've grown shelling peas in my garden and they're almost never as pea flavored or as unstarchy as the nice frozen ones that you can buy at the grocery store. So to finish this dish, we're gonna add 1 cup of these peas and then about 1/4 cup of heavy cream. If you wanted to make this dish really rich, you could up that to 1/2 cup, or you could use coconut milk and keep it totally vegan. That also tastes really good, by the way. I love coconut milk. Stir everything up here to combine to melt the peas down a little bit, and then to actually bring this dish into focus and to finish it off, we're gonna season it up. That means 20 to 30 grams of sugar depending on how sweet your tomato product was, and then plenty of salt to taste. This is a really important point, and honestly something that's really hard to teach, which is how do you season food? How do you know when it's ready? Basically, when it comes to salt, you want to take it to as salty as it could possibly be without tasting salty. That's the right amount. Some people prefer a little bit less salt, but I think there is a general objective spot where food actually tastes its best, and it's about 3 degrees shy of what I would consider salty. The other piece of this is sugar, which you want to take to the point where it's not tasting sweet, but it's definitely balancing the acid in those tomatoes. Keep in mind though, there is some fat in there from the heavy cream. That's going to do that as well. Fat and sugar together balance acid really nicely. That's why people like stuff like raspberry vinaigrette. tastes sweet, tastes tart. Now's also a good time to take a look at our pilaf. After the initial 15-minute simmer and the 15-minute steam time, we come back and we're gonna fluff this pilaf up to finish it off. We're gonna give it a taste, and of course, it tastes awesome because pilaf is awesome, and homemade is just so much more satisfying and pro than what comes boxed at the store. So at this point, the curry's seasoned up, it tastes great, the pilaf's ready to rip. Let's eat this thing. So I think that's a pretty good, solid, simple meal idea for you guys to throw into your weeknight toolkit. It's something that Lauren and I definitely eat a lot of. And I didn't mention this before, but I always throw some fried eggs on top. It kind of adds a little bit more protein to a kind of carb-heavy dish. Super great, adds a little bit of heft to the whole thing. And I do want to take a second to thank everybody who supported this channel on Ko-fi over the last couple months. That generosity gives me a lot of motivation to keep making this content. So thank you guys so much for the support. As always, guys, thank you so much for your time and attention. Thank you for sticking around, and we'll see you next time. Again, this is going to depend on how much of a chili head you guys are. If you're life-loving, down in the dirt, dog chili head, let me know in the comments down below.